Hello and a very warm welcome. My name's David Roth from WPP and it's my pleasure to be your host for today's live broadcast from the World Retail Congress here in Amsterdam 2019. This is the place where the world's global leaders of retailing come to discuss the issues that are facing them today and probably more important, the issues that are going to face them tomorrow. Well, we've got an action-packed program full of insightful views and opinions from those world leaders. Well, just as we've finished our broadcast last night, this will be the third live broadcast that we've done each evening. Just as we'd finished last night, I managed to get a little bit of time with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and that's going to appear in this broadcast. We also last night launched, in conjunction with the World Retail Congress and the World Retail Congress Hall of Fame, a new edition of the History of Retail in 100 Objects. That also now includes the lists and the analysis of all of the people who have been inducted into the World Retail Congress Hall of Fame. And if you want a copy of that book, which is kindly sponsored by Intel, all you need to do is send me an email, david.roth@wpp.com. And we also have an exclusive interview with Lord Stuart Rose, the former Chief Executive of Marks & Spencer's and now the Chairman of Ocado. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I'm sure you'll find this broadcast both fascinating and also full of actionable insights that you can use in your business. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed. Very nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good to be here.
It was a fascinating discussion that you've just had. Mr. Prime Minister, what contribution do you think that retailing makes to the economy and society in general?
So many. I mean, it is the biggest employer in the Netherlands. 900,000 people are somehow connected to the retail sector, so it is huge in its economic impact. That means that many people, in many cases young people, start their working life experiences in the retail sector. It is also a place where you can learn how to be more entrepreneurial and how to start your own business. It is a sector in our economy which is very much focused on innovation and disruptive innovation. It is very much connected to the modern economy, to the internet, to online shopping. So there are so many positives. And it's also a place where people come together. It's also a sort of community place. In some of the stores, people drink a cup of coffee, meet friends and then buy some stuff. So it has many, many impacts on society.
Mr. Prime Minister, you had a fantastic career at Unilever. You obviously know brands very well. Do you think country brands are as important as product brands?
Oh, they're crucial. And what I found in this job is that the brand of Amsterdam, the brand of the Netherlands, the brand of Eindhoven, or the whole commercial area around cities like Zwolle and Amersfoort are crucial for our international standing. And the fact that you can bike to school as a child, that it's relatively safe here, that there are so many possibilities when you like sports or culture. And I really learned to brand that much more than we did already.
One last question, Mr. Prime Minister. What advice would you give retailers today who are under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress? Everything's changing very fast.
Yeah, but still, at the same time, you are in a fascinating sector. So enjoy what you are doing. We live only once. This is the real thing. This is not the. So you have to make the best of it. And there are so many opportunities for good salespeople, for good businessmen and women, to make use of all those opportunities which are out there. And do realize that you play a very important part in societies. You are really part of society.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm really pleased to be joined by George MacDonald, who's the executive editor of Retail Week and the man really that does have his finger on the pulse of what's going on in retail around the world. George, thanks very much indeed for joining us. It's very, very early in the morning here at the World Retail Congress, the third day. You're positive proof that journalists do get up.
Yeah, I can't afford not to be here.
In fact, the number of times that I've heard you on the radio and the TV very early in the morning as the retail results comes out, it's positive proof. George, just let's start with a sort of a helicopter overview. What's the state of retail today, in your view?
I think it's still a really disrupted industry, and it's more than technology. I think over the last few years we've thought a lot about the growth of online, mobile shopping, and seen that as the disruption. But I think really the bigger effect of the consumer's adoption of that technology is completely transformed expectations about what they expect from retailers, how they're talked to by retailers, how their values are reflected by retailers. So it's sort of seeping deep into the culture of companies, this sort of sense of ongoing change. And now I think we're at a stage where things like diversity are really, really coming through.
Well, it was interesting. There was yesterday, I suppose, a main stage session on diversity. But as you were saying, it's coming through in lots of the other sessions right across the piece of the Congress.
Yeah, it is. And there were a couple of interesting takeaways for me. One of the speakers yesterday was Neela Montgomery, who runs Crate and Barrel, used to hold various senior positions at Tesco, and she was talking about the board and senior management, and she said, if you don't look like your customer, you're getting into a very dangerous place, and that's quite different. While in the past, obviously retailers could never achieve success if they weren't in tune with the customer. But I do think there is this change where they've got to be part of your business almost. They've got to see themselves and what they are bothered about reflected right throughout retailers. And we've heard from some startup companies, and again, what I thought was interesting was how they have really started from the customer and how they created these businesses because they thought that a customer group wasn't being represented. Well. So Universal Standard was one of the ones that we're talking, a US business. And, that was set up because, the founder thought people like her were being really badly catered for. And it shows, you can still create successful businesses despite such a competitive environment.
Now, I said with jest that you now have to get up very early because all the business programs are very interested in the retailers' results. It wasn't that long ago where no one was particularly interested in retail results. Yeah. Why every quarter now is the world so fixated with the results of some of the world's leading retailers?
Well, I think actually, everybody goes shopping. So unlike some industries, people engage with it every day. And in certain places, certainly in the UK, people are just fascinated by the world of retail, the high street. They want to know what's going on. They will know, some of the people who run these companies are very well known in their own right. They would be recognised. And I think it's that, day-to-day involvement with an industry that makes it really interesting. And going back to where we started, because the consumer has so much power now, they want to know how are these businesses changing to reflect what they're interested in. they flocked en masse to Aldi, for instance, in the UK. And that's their story being told as a consumer when they hear the results a few years back of Tesco when it was in trouble, or some of the others. But I also think public retailers can get in a bit of a bind with the quarterly reporting, because I do think it can divert you away from how you've got to change over a longer time period, and you've got that city obsession with have you hit this quarter's sales numbers, but there's a bigger story going on.
Yeah, and I suppose it is slightly unfair, but that's the world at the moment. The current retailers have to operate in the quarter-to-quarter game, whereas the new disruptive retailers, the analysts and their investors, are allowing them much more freedom to operate than looking at the latest quarter's year-on-year increases.
Yeah, completely different approach. For many years, obviously, Amazon didn't make a profit, and investors weren't bothered, but try doing that if you had been a more traditional retailer. Although interestingly now, we have seen some of the newer names, some of the well-known e-tailers, they've hit some turbulence of their own, and they are starting to be sort of subject to the same metrics. And when you talk to investors, including private equity groups, there's a real focus again now on when are the profits going to come in? Are you going to hit targets? When are you going to make money? And a lot of these new businesses are actually, they're pretty costly to run, again, because the consumer's expectations have been ramped up so high for 1 hour delivery, same day, and all these types of things.
Well, going from, I suppose, one of the largest retailers in the world to a UK-specific retailer, Walmart and Asda and Sainsbury's. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about the acquisition by Sainsbury's of Asda. That's pretty much been what has been completely blocked by the competition authorities in the UK. Asda's Walmart CEO yesterday said most likely that they're going to float on the stock exchange, Asda. Does the world need another public grocery business?
Really interesting question, because it's a mature business. So I think I guess it's going to depend upon what is the story. So it's been through the mill a little bit itself, but it's been coming up. They've had, I can't remember, but quite a few quarters now of growth. So there is a good business there. And so I guess if you were going to buy into it, you're sort of looking for that sort of reliability of income. It's not a startup that's going to be exponentially growing. So I think it will be really about what is the story, what are they offering. Despite the collapse of the merger, there is space for the number of grocers that we have at the moment, because people used to regard UK grocery as really monolithic. That idea of the big four, you thought a few years ago it could never change, but it has quite dramatically and quite quickly. And so that does show that the dynamics move in food retail. So there could be space for it, but as always, it's going to depend upon what are the prospects, what's different about it, why is it worth being in for a longer time, and some of their problems were because it was sort of being run a bit quarter by quarter.
Yes. Well, I can't let you go without asking you one Brexit question. Well, we're on the same sort of boat. But what impact do you think it's having on the retail industry?
I think it's actually quite difficult to tell, because we're none the wiser about exactly when it's going to happen, on what terms. I think it will happen, and worryingly, I think as we speak now, no deal is sort of moving back up the agenda.
What impact that's going to have on supply chain and?
Well, there'll be all that, but also you've got the impact on the shopper. What's it going to do to the pound in their purse. How far is that going to go? And there's quite a lot of evidence, depending on where we are in the news cycle on Brexit, you do see that sort of coming through. But, a few months ago, the big grocers warned that they were really worried about the supply chain. They talked about the prospect of food rotting at the ports. Now, just think about that for 1 minute. These are, they're not headline chasers. They're quite conservative companies with a small c. So when they're sort of flagging concerns like this, it really shows the extent of the disruption that there could be.
And finally, George, how would you sum up the retail world that we're living in a couple of words?
They're really exciting, really driven by the consumer, and that is creating new opportunities. One of the really interesting things that I've picked up on the last few days as well is, the constant search for the new role of the store. As more is bought online, you might need less space. And somebody yesterday was talking about, should you actually move to a metric of engagement per square foot, but sales per market to more accurately reflect the changes. And I think that ongoing debate about the shop's here to stay, but what will it be in the future? That is going to be really, really fascinating to see.
Well, George McDonald, Executive Editor of Retail Week, thank you very much indeed. It's always wonderful to see the world of retail through your eyes.
Thanks.
Well, I'm now here with Neela Montgomery, who is the CEO of Crate and Barrel. Thank you very much indeed. It's very nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Gosh, things are happening fast at the moment, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. Ever more so. And I think it's been interesting, even in the time that I've been at Crate and Barrel for 18 months, how much we've changed as a business. We've introduced new partnerships. We're started to partner with a furniture rental business. We're partnering on registry with Universal Registry. Just all these new kind of consumer trends that we're having to engage with, as well as obviously continuing to improve our brand experience in stores and online, etc.
And how do you, as a CEO, manage all the various different elements now of the business and work out what on earth the priorities should be that everybody should work on? Because, there's so many things now.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important question as a CEO, because what can happen is everybody's pursuing the shiniest new thing,
yes.
And it's actually, in the short term, a relatively small part of your revenue, and it's very much a test and learn. And retail isn't typically well suited to test and learn because scale is so important. So the way that I've approached that is to set at the beginning of the year a very clear kind of strategic agenda and strategic priorities, maybe 6 initiatives, and then to have a couple that are kind of R&D type initiatives. So our partnership with Zola was one of those. Zola's a universal registry. And what we decided is, okay, we want a small dedicated team to work on some of these kind of more test and learn R&D type initiatives, so that we're not distracting our core team too much. And then when it reaches a certain scale, we'll reintegrate it.
And the business now is becoming more complicated. I know that a lot of people start talking about multi-channel and e-commerce, whatever. It seems a little bit of a strange differentiation now. It is all retailing. How do you work out the balance between things that you want to do physically and things that you want to do virtually, and the interrelationship between the two of those?
Yeah, I think that's obviously the channel where we execute and kind of optimize our experience. I think it actually is a bigger shift is actually happening before that in our marketing activity, because we're really having to think about what is the impact of social media, how much do we spend on Facebook advertising versus traditional catalogs, or, there's a lot of different kind of customer analytics and data that now goes into determining how do you prioritize spending on customers, what's the segmentation and valuation that you use. We talk a lot about lifetime value. Yes. And then when you've decided which customer you think you're going to prioritize for investment and how, what really matters to that customer and the experience. So for example, in furniture, we've decided that's a very high value customer, very loyal. But what really matters is that they have an incredible experience from a service perspective. So we created Design Studio, and we put in 9,000 design 9,000 design consultations with customers, where you can really come and have an in-depth conversation with an associate using a 3D rendering of your space. And we think that's a much better investment than, say, having a lot of traffic and low value interactions with customers. So you always have to prioritize. You have to ensure that all your interactions are good, but that there are places where you need to innovate, and those require prioritization.
And within that context, is, as you see it, is the role of the store changing?
Very much so, and we're seeing much more customers are coming there to look and test a product. Now, for us, we're lucky in that furniture has always been a showroom as such, because
well, you want to touch and feel, and
and you can't walk out of the store with your sofa. So in that sense, that's always been our model, and that's excellent. But even, you know, in our more traditional categories like kitchen or entertaining, you know, people are so empowered before they arrive at the store, and ensuring that your associates have the same level of knowledge is actually quite difficult. And so one of the things we pride ourselves on is kind of our associates knowing a lot about their product, but increasingly they also need to know, how is that product being used on social media? What photos are customers taking? What user-generated content do we have? And we're really trying to make that very digestible for our associates, so that they feel that they can have a conversation with the customer with an equal amount of knowledge, if not more.
Now, you've closed a few stores. What's the evaluation that you look at now when you look at the estate that you've got, the estate that you want, and how you transition from A to B?
Yeah, so we have about 108 stores across the US and Canada, including CB2, which is our highest growth brand. And we're actually opening stores in CB2. We opened 4 last year, and we'll open 3 this year. With Crate & Barrel, I think we have roughly the right number of stores, but in some markets we're just overstored. So we had 8 stores in the Chicago market, and we decided to close 1.
Well, that was your home market,
yes,
I suppose.
But 8 stores of our size is quite a lot. And we just don't need 8 stores in that market anymore. We probably need 5. So over time, you know, we'll reduce our portfolio in those markets. There may be opportunities for a smaller format. But for example, in the same year, we opened a store in Vegas, and we'd spent 10 years looking for a location in Vegas. We opened that store, and we're delighted. So, you know, that's how we'll adapt and shift our portfolio over time.
Now, you mentioned a few alliances that you are doing. I think there's this new concept. I would sort of call it sort of ecosystem sort of brands and organisations. Do you see Crate & Barrel being, you know, looking to the future, the centre of a whole series sort of eco brands that are around it, that support it, that are some that are may have a financial relationship, some not, to ensure that the customer is now in the centre of absolutely everything?
Yes, I mean, I think for Crate & Barrel, it's an interesting for us to have a portfolio, because we'd have to think very carefully about the curation, because that's what we're famous for, the curation of brands. Therefore, they'd have to serve a very specific need for a customer at a specific time and have that design aesthetic, because we're only with you at a very specific occasion in your life or a specific time of year, unlike someone that has a lot more frequency of interaction, like a Target or a Walmart. So if we did that, it would be because we believe that we could create a series of boutiques, brands and boutique voices with very distinctive voices, and we will do some of that. I don't know if I would describe it as an ecosystem. That sounds probably more than that. I'd say more a curation of brands.
Now, curation has always been an integral part of the business ever since it was first started with Crate & Barrels. How important is the merchant? You know, we're moving into a world of algorithms and maths. How important to you is the merchant who loves products, who has a design sense, who can put a collection together, who can colour coordinate in this world? Yeah,
ever more important, actually.
So you say more important rather than less important going
Yes,
forward.
I mean, I think obviously at a CEO level, I don't think that's enough anymore, because you have to be able to manage technology and marketing shifts, as I've described, and partnerships. And so I think it would be increasingly challenging if your only background was product and creativity and merchandise to be the CEO. I think that transition's harder than it used to be. But I think the value of creativity and product and merchandising is ever greater. I just hired a new chief merchant, actually, and it's fascinating. He's much younger. How he thinks about product, because he thinks very much about how it will look on Instagram as how it might look on a store.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting, because it always has been.
Yeah.
What does it look like on the shelf? What does it look like in the store?
And so, new generation.
So, do you think you'll find different types of product? I mean, as a result of looking at it through that different lens, a different type of products emerging within the store over the
Yes, I think we will, because one of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is that we have this incredibly iconic designs, and some of our products have been in our assortment for 20, 25 years, and that's wonderful. But the influence of fashion on our consumer, especially through social media, the fact that everyone's now kind of an amateur designer through House, means that there is that need for faster fashion and trend even in home furnishings. And if you don't have somebody who's kind of connected to that world, that's going to be harder and harder to achieve. So that is a shift that's happening.
Now, is that person, not necessarily that particular individual, but do you see this sort of mix now of the merchant working very closely with the data, and how are you trying to fuse those two things together? Are they the same individuals? Are they different individuals?
Well, it's interesting. In the US, there's often a chief product or creative officer and a chief merchant officer, yes. And there's sometimes different roles. Europe tends to have them more in one. I think they are different. They're left brain, right brain. But interestingly, what I'm finding is that the chief merchant, it's a given that they have to be data-centric and financially astute, etc. What's interesting is you can't just be a chief product person who's out there with no understanding or acceptance of data and financials anymore. I don't think you ever could, actually, but ever less so in this world.
But you could with your personality, you could push through things on instinct.
You could try, yeah, you could. And so look, we still need those people to be ahead of where the customer's at, right? So you still need them to be forecasting trend and moving beyond where the customer wants to go. Otherwise, you'll end up with a faster horse type syndrome in product, which you don't want. But equally, you can't have someone who ignores the data of the product they have launched. Yes. So I think that's the blend we're looking for.
Well, finally, how would you describe, maybe in one word or two, I might give you three, the times that we're living at the moment, the times you're living, when you wake up in the morning, you go to the office? What does it feel like?
Fast and furious and exciting.
Well, as long as exciting is part of that mix, I think that's not bad to ask for on a Monday morning. Leila Montgomery, the CEO of Crate & Barrel, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to be joined by Tim Steiner, who's the CEO of Ocado, and Rodney McClellan, who is the Chairman and CEO of Kroger. A very warm welcome. Thanks very much indeed. You've just come off the main stage here at the World Retail Congress. It's pretty much the end of the Congress. But before we talk about that, first of all, I just want to say congratulations. Last night you were inducted into the Hall of Fame. Not many people are in that, and well done. So mega congratulations from everybody.
Thank you, David. And obviously it's an incredible honor, and to me it was really an opportunity to represent our 460,000 associates because that's what made it possible.
Well, let's talk about that. You've had an amazing transformation of your business over the course of the last few years that you've been in command, both as CEO. Tell us a little bit about that transformation, because it's against a background of probably the fastest paced transformation that we've seen in the retail sector ever.
Yeah, well, to me, it's never easy, and once you know for sure, it's too late. So you have to take risk, and you have to stay out there. One of the things that early on in our journey is that obviously we have incredible connections with our associates and our customers, but there are other things that we need to move faster on, and that's really when we decided we needed to partner with other people. And we've announced several partnerships with a company called Neuro for autonomous vehicles, Walgreens, Microsoft, and others, but then also Ocado in terms of really being able to accelerate our online journey.
Now, it wasn't that many years ago when retailers all wanted to do everything themselves, create their own supply systems and their own distribution systems on the basis that, they believed that they were best to be able to control the total customer experience. Would you agree we're moving to a different era sort of an ecosystem? And within those ecosystem, you partner, some of the partners you might own, some of the partners you might just do a financial deal with, some you might own a little bit of equity in, but it's become now too big for anybody to manage and to operate that at speed without that sort of ecosystem.
Well, to me, all the advantages you just mentioned, David, is part of it. The other thing is when I look at Tim and the talent that Tim has and the team and the drive and the ecosystem they have in terms of getting best-in-class ideas across the whole world, that's an ecosystem that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. And I think about, Ocado's been on the journey for basically, 20 years now?
Yeah.
And the learnings that they have, if we were even world class, at best it would be 5 years for us to catch up to where Ocado is today, much less where Ocado is going to be in 5 years.
But it sort of takes a big person to admit that, in a sense, and to say, actually, we can't do it ourselves, and the best thing to do is to a strategic partnership.
Yes, I guess I would somewhat disagree, because everything that we're doing is what helps the customer get what they want, and how do we support our associates. And you shouldn't be in these jobs if you have an ego that doesn't help you understand that that's all that matters at the end of the day, and how do you get there as quick as you can.
Now, Tim, you've been on an amazing journey. When you first started, was it 20 years ago?
Just under.
Just under 20, so let's be kind, 19 years ago. and the ups and downs you've had. At any point did you say, actually, it was a great idea, but we're going to give up?
Well, we wouldn't be here if I'd ever said that. There were plenty of people who suggested that we should say that.
Well, that's soothsayers. What little they know.
We ignored them and, carried on. Look, I think for many years, a lot of people thought e-commerce was going to be a very small part of the market, that it was best to do it from your existing store-based assets, and the idea of automation, centralization, of building all this software was completely redundant. And slowly but surely, we won people over. As Rodney would say, we did the best job for our customers in their homes. We delivered a better and more outstanding service than the giants of our market, the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's and the Asda's and people. And so we started to grow, and we grew, and we grew, and we started to show that we could do it at economics that none of them could do. And that was the really weird part, where we could do the best service and the best economics. And then when we started to do that, people started to wake up and kind of take note. And obviously in 2013, we signed our first partnership deal with Morrison's. And we then realized that there was a big opportunity. And the best way to go global was to go global as partners, and not try and build a retail business to compete with Kroger and Amazon and Walmart and Target and Costco in their market. And so that was our strategy, but we went out there to do a lot of tech work to position ourselves to be a kind of enterprise grade technology business, where we have the right stuff to supply to a company of the history and importance and scale of a Kroger, for example. And then people did think we weren't going to do it, and but we were having conversations with the retailers, and we realised what interest there was, and we realised the progress that we were making, and we did persist. And now we're working in 7 countries with multiple clients, and hopefully, as we were saying, the benefit is to each of them. So the learnings that we'll get from the different markets that we're in France or in Australia or in Sweden, will end up in Florida or Cincinnati or wherever we're trading. Wherever our clients have got customers, those customers will benefit from those worldwide learnings and the amount of resources that we can put behind the innovation.
Over that learning period, what are the key sort of pillars of things that have helped you take sort of a leap in both your offer and your proposition?
Look, it's
over
interesting.
That time?
People are always thinking there's like a silver bullet, or there's one part of our proposition that we did better. And visibly, they often look at the warehouse and go, it's the Ocado warehouse. And actually, the thing that's allowed us to succeed to where we are today, and allowed us to have something that can help the likes of a business such as Kroger, is that what we're actually good at is innovating. And what we're actually good at is driving ourselves forward all the time. And actually, we believe that the solutions that we've built in mobile, in the front end, in the checkout walk on the front end, in search, in the warehouse, in routing, in the in-van software, we believe that we've done that better than anything, best in class in every single component. And then the beauty of owning all of it and running all of it means it integrates much more seamlessly. And so if something happens in the warehouse, we notice the quality of something is not right, and we press something on a gun, instantly the web shop has stopped selling it, the mobile has stopped selling it to customers because it's no longer going to be available. And so it's stuff like that where everything kind of integrates and is seamless, and it's the speed with which, and how we can be agile, because we're not dependent on 15 different people to do one thing. We haven't got a WMS vendor and a web shop and a search engine and a. We've got our own teams. And so if something happens in one of Rodney's markets and he says, look at this innovation somebody's doing, we want to counter it like this, it's one team to go and talk to and say, well, how quickly can we make these changes?
Rodney, given how many opportunities there are to innovate, to do things differently, how do you, as the chairman and the CEO, decide on the priorities of things that are, wow, that's really going to have a great impact, that's a fantastic idea, but actually we shouldn't be devoting any resource to it?
I mean, it really does start with the customer and understanding customer trends. So an example would be several years ago with our own brands, we introduced a line called Simple Truth, and it's a natural and organic brand. Today it's a $2.3 billion brand, and we introduced it 5 years ago. And you got to make sure that the things you identify have size potential. It's not something that's a hobby or just interesting. And you're constantly out there. But one of the nice things about being a big company is you are able to test and learn on a regular basis.
And how much time, effort, and resource within the organisation is devoted to testing?
Well, it depends on how you define testing, because if you think about new products to offer, that's something we do every single day.
That's business as usual, I'd say.
That's something you do every single day. If it's something that, if you look at our relationship with Walgreens, where we're testing in Northern Kentucky, Walgreens, it's something that we would have a separate team that work on, and then their responsibility is to make sure they're using the resources of Kroger, the data of Kroger, to decide, make some of the business decisions.
Now, your relationship is a little bit, I would say, like a marriage. You're integrated into each other's lives and businesses, and success and failures. Collectively so far, what have you learned from each other?
Well, first of all, for Kroger, the first thing was just understanding Tim and Okado's values and approach to the business, the things that Tim just mentioned about just not being satisfied. So for us, before it got to any type of where you started having deeper conversations, those are the things that we were looking for, because we knew that we could trust Tim, we could trust his team, the values they had, the way they approached the business, focus on the customer and all those things. So those were the first pieces, and then it really was trying to identify, can we take 1 + 1 and equal 5 or 10 or whatever.
So not satisfied with the 1 + 1 = 3. I like it.
We were actually talking about that at lunch. But for us, that was really the things that got us excited.
So look, we're dramatically different age organisations. Yes. So we watched a video before about the history of Kroger, but it started with a focus on the customer, and we started with a focus on the customer. So every time we look at a challenge, we don't say what's the cheapest way to do it. We say what's the best way to do it. Now, how do we do that cheaply? And so I think we share a view of, if we do the best job for the end customer, then as long as we do that in a smart an intelligent way and apply whatever technology we can to it, the end result will be the right one. And so I think we come at it from the same angle, and therefore we're not sitting there kind of clashing with each other all the time. So I think it's working really well, and we think it's going to carry on doing so.
There are many retailers around the world that are trying to close as many stores as they possibly can. What's your view about the relationship between the physical store and the virtual store?
Well, I don't think the customer will make the distinguishment as much as we do.
Yep.
And it really depends on how good a job do you do from a physical standpoint to create an experience that causes somebody to want to come there? Everything that we can find when a customer shops with us online, they still come to a physical store as well. And we actually get a higher share of their total spending, which is a win for everyone.
Tim, what's your view? I mean, in a sense, you come at it from a slightly different direction. I admit it's nice to see you both coming from the customer first focus, which is tremendous. You come at it from a technology perspective. What's your view about the physical versus the virtual?
Look, all of our customers have got physical stores, and our new partner in the UK obviously has got physical stores. And as Rodney said, the customers want different things, and in some markets that will mean the physical stores will stay and will grow, and in some areas there'll be less of them, as you mentioned before, because just the economics of stores. But we're not anti-stores, or everything's got its place for the customer. And in the same way that convenience isn't anti-hypermarket, it's another place that a customer can get something when they need something different, and it might not be competing with a hypermarket. As Rodney said before, it could be competing with a restaurant or something like that. That's how we see online. Some people want to shop this way, and we're here to help our clients serve their customers this way, and some of their customers will want to carry on shopping in their store estate. What I think that we've shown in the UK over the last 19 years is in kind of, in dense urban populated areas, we can do a better job for the customer by using technology and automation and centralization of the type that we're rolling out together now in the US, that is a better job for the customer than you can achieve in a store. Not because we're cleverer than people that operate stores, just because we haven't got customers coming in between the order being placed and the order being fulfilled, and having customers come in and take the stock off the shelves that we didn't know was going to happen. And various reasons like that just means that fundamentally we can be cleverer, and obviously we've developed the technologies and the processes and things to take advantage of that. And so we can both do a better job for the customer and do it at a lower cost, a lower all-in cost, including the fixed assets that we need to put down together. And so, we think that's the right solution for dense urban areas, and we're rolling some of those out and the surrounding geographies around them. But in other areas, even in e-commerce, the store is the right asset to use as well. So we think there's just a mix for the future. And obviously, as store retailers have done, so I think I heard in the video at one point you had 5,000 stores or something,
right.
And you're much bigger than you were then, but now you've got 2,000 stores. Store estates of successful retailers change all the time. And obviously, this is just another one of those things that has to be taken into account when you're looking at the future direction of your store estate.
When you look at the future direction now, do you spend a lot of time looking at what's going on in China?
Definitely. And to me, from a retail standpoint, it's one of the most exciting and changing markets at a speed that...
Well, China's speed is like 30 times faster than anywhere else, really, isn't it?
Well, they were able to, a lot of the old legacy infrastructure they didn't have, so they were able to leapfrog.
They have the other advantage of a growing economy. So when you're, if you've got a growing economy and growing demand, then you always need something new anyway. So you can put the new thing in, as your extra capacity. Whereas if you already have a lot of assets, it's harder. It's always, I think, harder in the West, for example, to go and say, I'm going to build something new. But, people are bold enough to do it anyway.
It seems now in China that unless you're delivering within 30 minutes, you're not really in the game. Are we going to see delivery speed being the driver of the growth of e-commerce and the differentiator, or is at some point that's actually just going to stop?
Look, the dynamics in China, obviously to do with things like labour rates and regulations, what you can carry on a motorbike and stuff, are very, very different to somewhere like the UK, which is very, very similar to somewhere like the US, right? There are different shopping missions, and that's already true in bricks and mortar estates in terms of convenience and petrol or gas stations, smaller convenience, next size of convenience, all the way up to giant hypermarkets, and they tend to be different missions, different desires for the customers. I think, as Rodney mentioned on stage before, we've been trialling a service called Zoom in West London at the moment, and our average delivery time from placing the order is 30 minutes. But I see that more as a convenience offering that will serve a customer's grocery needs, probably not competing with the main shop that they do with us anyway, competing with a store they might have popped into, but also competing with a restaurant delivery service or a restaurant itself. And it's early days for us, but we're seeing double-digit week-on-week growth there in sales, and it's something that will work efficiently and offer a phenomenal customer experience at sustainable, profitable economics, because it's part of an ecosystem of bigger buildings and smaller buildings and shared assets and common and clever code kind of thing. So it's something that we're trialing the first one in the UK, but who knows where the second one will be.
Artificial intelligence, it's impossible to read an article anywhere on anything without artificial intelligence being there. Are you harnessing the power of that within the massive data sets that you now have at Kroger?
I would say yes and no. If you compare it to 5 years ago, the answer is yes. But if you look at versus the potential, I think we're just beginning that journey, and it's the exciting part of the journey.
I'd imagine you've been looking at that for a long time.
We've had quite a lot of intelligence
Yes.
for quite a while, but it is moving and spreading, further and deeper into the business. There are the obvious places like your supply chain or your routing algorithms where you've got intelligence, but the amount of data processing that we do in a warehouse just every time we move a product now is just unbelievable. And some of the AI that we do to help customers find the right products at the right time and kind of help the store to be the most effective for them, it is fascinating. And although we've done quite a lot, as Rodney would say, there's a lot more to do, and things are only going to get smarter.
Finally, how would you characterise, maybe in one or two words, or maybe even a sentence, the age we're living today? When you leave your home and you go into the office, what do you feel?
Energized and excited.
Fantastic.
I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, it's rapid. It's rapid change, but it's opportunity.
Fantastic. Rodney, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure. Once again, congratulations being inducted in the World Retail Congress Hall of Fame for 2019. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight to be with you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, at the start of the World Retail Congress here in Amsterdam, we launched in conjunction with the World Retail Congress the Brandsy Top 75 Most Valuable Global Retail Brands. And you can get a copy of that report, which also includes some key insights that I know you'll find very valuable. All you need to do to get hold of that report is just download it from www.brandsy.com. Well, if you can't wait to find out who's on that list, all you need to do though is just watch this to see the Brandsy Top 75 Most Valuable Global Retail Brands for 2019.
Down softly, just say you're gonna leave. Oh,
Well, you can get no better and bigger retail expert than Lord Stuart Rose, and I'm delighted that Lord Rose is with us now. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us.
Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart. When just been on the platform, you said something about, somebody mentioned 25 years on, and you said, in 25 years I'm going to be dead. That sort of shocked me a little bit, but all seriousness about that. When somebody reads your obituary, what is it that you want them to learn about you in your retail career, Stuart?
Well, what I'd like them to say about me, forgetting my retail career, is to say, actually, he was a straight-talking, straight bloke.
Well, you can't...
And nothing would give me greater pleasure, because I think we all deal with people all the time, and I've spent my life dealing in consumer industries where you're dealing with customers and suppliers and employees every day. And I've always found that, for me, the most important thing is for people to recognise that everybody's got a role to play, and everybody is exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you're a chief executive or the guy operating the baler in the back of the store. You're all vital to the organisation.
Your contribution to retail has been immense. I think, 45 years, maybe slightly longer in retail?
Longer, yeah.
Slightly than well, I'm going to the
Closer to
exact
50 than 45.
Okay, all right, okay. Over that time, I mean, retail's changed since God was a boy. But it's the pace of change now that I think is considered. What's your perspective?
Well, I mean, listen, the retail, people sort of have a slightly doomsday view about retail today, and because there have been a few external factors which affected consumer confidence, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is that that's what we do. When we go to work and we make a bit of money and we've paid our rent and we bought some food, we want to go out and spend what we've got to do whatever we want to do, which does our thing. And, we talk about curating people's lifestyles these days. One person might want to be into electronics, one might want to be into cosmetic surgery, one might be into something else, but the whole of that delivering to customers is a very exciting place, and that's why I went into retail 40, 50 years ago. It's why I continue to enjoy it, and why I'm absolutely sure that retail will be a vibrant part of economies for millennia ahead.
And we'll still have stores. People will still go into physical stores,
Of course
touch
you do.
things, pick them up,
Listen,
enjoy the curation.
I love the idea, if I can't do something and I've a bit short of time, that I can sit on my mobile phone and order, my groceries from Ocado on my mobile phone tonight and get them delivered by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Equally, I get just as much pleasure, if not more, being able to say, I fancy a nice piece of cheese. I'll go down to Providora's in Marylebone High Street and spend half an hour choosing it. Of course, we're going to do that. Nobody wants to sit looking at a screen all day.
Well, we were lucky enough to interview the Prime Minister of the Netherlands yesterday.
Who I told was excellent.
He was absolutely excellent. But he says he does his own shopping. We were all very shocked about that. But he loves going into stores. It's the same with you. There's something wonderful about going to a store and having an experience.
Which is, again, why I'm optimistic about retailers, providing they understand that it's their job to surprise and delight the customers every day. If you put something, whether it's a piece of clothing or a piece of electronics or a piece of food in front of somebody, which is what they want at a price that they think is reasonable, and give them a good time when they're buying it, i.e. offering them great product, great environment and great service, they'll come flocking back. They love it, of course they do. It's no different to you and me going to a restaurant. We know exactly when we had good service, exactly when we had a good meal, exactly when we had bad service, and exactly when we had a bad meal. You don't go back to the place you had bad service and a bad meal.
When you ran Marks and Spencer's, just as an example of the many businesses that you've run, how did you manage to take your vision, your perspective, and make the person on the shop floor, the person who's interacting with the consumer, understand that?
Well, it is, it's difficult, number one, but the answer is have a very simple story. Number two, believe the story. Number three, articulate the story and get people to buy into it. And number four, keep repeating it. Actually, I've just used a couple of words. But for me, it was quality, value, service, innovation, and trust. And people understand intrinsically what quality is. They understand what value is. Price times quality equals value. They understand good service and bad service. They understand an innovative business from a non-innovative business, and they love to trust something. You just say to people, that's what we stand for, and we're going to do it with good product, good stores, and good service. Well, everybody can remember that, and most people wouldn't argue with it, and that's what we tried to do. But you do have to be quite relentless at it.
Now, It's always surprised me, as an ex-retailer myself, that governments around the world have underestimated the contribution that retailing makes to the economy and to the society.
It's a scandal.
What's your views?
It's a scandal. I mean,
Why is it?
being realistic, governments owe us around the world a great debt of gratitude because retailers are remarkably efficient, they're remarkably innovative, they're ingenious at being able to deal with difficulties and, wherever they are, whether it's currencies going up or down, whether it's issues on supply chains and whatever else. And if you look at the cost of electronics and clothing and food in real terms over the last 50 years, they've gone down. And that is all credit of that is due to the ingenuity of retailers and their supply chains. So we've kept inflation down. We've given customers better choice, better quality, better standards. We've employed more people. I think we've enriched societies as a result. And of course, we get it wrong from time to time, but I don't know why they don't like it.
But retailing has never had the credit for all that, have they?
But, we can live with that. Though.
Okay, so now, looking to the future, in your crystal ball of what might well happen over the course of the next few years, what's top of your list?
Well, change will continue to happen. Change will continue to happen at a faster pace. And what? If I were to turn the question slightly around the other way and say, what qualities do leaders, chief executives, men and women need to have for the next 25 years of retail? Is they need to have a finger on the pulse, antennae tuned in to every change, every nuance, every change in behaviour, every change in trend, every demand that whether you're generation X, generation Y, generation Z, who are your customers want. React to that, anticipate those needs, deliver those the requirements, and you'll survive. So you've got to be very, very a big listener. Take on board those inputs, but don't just sit there saying, I've listened and I've got them on board. Do something about it. And today, as I was saying earlier this morning, you cannot expect one company, one person to have the answer to all the questions. Companies have got to recognise they have to reach out and collaborate. And secondly, they have to put the best possible teams together because it's only teams that make great businesses.
So going forward, do you see a notion now of the eco company which has an ecosystem around it that is the thing that's delivering for the end consumer?
Well, I hope so.
Good. Well, Lord Stuart Rose, it's fantastic of you to be with us. I know you've got a busy man. Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I can't believe it, but this is the end of the World Retail Congress 2019 here in Amsterdam. And again, I'm joined by the chairman of the World Retail Congress, the founder of the World Retail Congress, Ian McGarrigle. Ian, lovely to be with you.
Lovely to be here.
As ever, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been, feels like longer than 3 days.
It does. Have you had any sleep?
Not a lot.
Yeah. Reflections?
I think it's been a great Congress this year. I mean, I probably say that every year, but it just feels like the content has really come together. I mean, I think feels like we're overworking the theme now, but high velocity retail has worked really well. I mean, it's just amazing how everyone has been dropping it into conversations and even their presentations. Even the Dutch Prime Minister used the phrase high velocity retail.
It's impressive, isn't it?
But I think it's breaking that down. I think there's a real sense that retailers aren't just talking now about what needs to happen in the industry. There's a real clear focus, I think, on what from the businesses we heard from anyway, that what needs to be done, and they are doing it. I mean, we have closed this year and this afternoon with Kroger and Ocado, but in particular listening to Rodney McMullen from Kroger, and I know you've got some film, an interview with both Rodney and Tim, but that's. We've had a number of retailers from like Walmart, Kroger, Levi's, that are long-established retailers, and it's great to hear from them about how they're embracing innovation and transformation.
I thought it was particularly interesting, and they were probably the best example, but we've heard quite a few of established retailers doing a partnership, and a very intricate partnership, something that is business critical, with very interesting partners, technology partners.
You always listen for buzzwords that come out of the Congress, because they just seem to naturally come out, and it's obviously not just fads, but partnership, collaboration, definitely two words, I think. And again, this afternoon, we just, as it were, happened to hear from some great examples, Carrefour and Google, and Kroger and Ocado, sort of real life examples of that thinking that there's so much to do, you can't be great at everything. Why would you want to, let's partner with? And I think there's that sense of collaboration is something you wouldn't necessarily have heard from retail. I mean, it's competition is the word you would always...
Exactly, I think that is a real step change. I mean, I think it's the sign of the times, but it's a real step change, which is this conversation we were having with Kroger and Ocado, that there is so much to do that you just cannot do it all yourselves. No. And it wasn't that long ago where retailers wanted to do everything themselves. They thought they were the only people who could make sure that their proposition to the customer was by things they did as opposed to anybody else did.
I think the other buzzword, and I think it's really relevant, is purpose. I mean, maybe the language has just changed, but trust was talked about, but purpose around a brand, a retail business or particularly a brand, is talked about. We've had a couple of specific sessions on it, but I'm really pleased we did, because it's something people are really focused on. It's more than just knowing what your brand stands for. It seems to cut right through the whole business, from the culture of the business, what the people feel like working in the business, what's the leadership culture, but really how does it interact with and how does it feel like for your consumers. And we hear a lot about what millennials and Gen Z consumers think, and that's for good reason, because they are, as we've heard, over the last 3 days, really attuned to those issues. And And
of course, last night was the Retail Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And at that we also launched the joint edition that we've done together, World Retail Congress and WPP and Intel, for the, I've got a copy here, the History of Retail in 100 Objects, together with the Hall of Fame.
It's great to, as ever, work together. I had the really hard task of writing 100 words forward, but...
But you did pretty quickly, actually.
But no, I mean, you've really kindly taken a publication we worked on 3 years ago when it was the 10th anniversary of the World Retail Hall of Fame, where we launched it with 100 great names that built modern retail when we launched it in 2007, and we've been inducting people into the Hall of Fame ever since. And it's always struck us that those stories, those 100 and something people that are in there, have extraordinary stories to tell and contributions. And last night was a great evening, because we had 4 great inductees, Rodney McMullen being one of them, Dick Bohr of Ahold, Kath Kidston, and Chadati Churkakul of CM Puat, and all 4 of them in their own very different ways talked about, quite emotionally actually, about what retailing means to them, but also talked about retail is about passion. Kath Kidston sort of was hugely passionate about the fact that retailing will never die. It will always exist. It is changing, but it is about creating great products that people want to buy and making people feel great about that. But people, I think it was Rodney McMullen said, that serving people gives a great buzz to the people that work in it. And it's sometimes, we talk a lot about the technology and the AI and the robots, but retail remains a very human industry, and that's, I think nice. Everyone appreciated that.
Yeah, and it's nice to combine the people and the objects together, and that is the retail past, present, and future. So, talking about the future then, 2020 World Retail Congress, where's that? I mean, 2020 sounds an age away. It's just 12 months.
And it's likely to be April, so the clock is already ticking. It's less than a year away. But yes, it's likely that we'll be back here in Amsterdam. We were waiting to gauge what the reaction has been, and we've had a really positive reaction. It's been great to be here, and we organised for the sun to shine for the full 4 days that we've been here. It's been fabulous, and we've been brilliantly supported by the Dutch retail industry, and we would be delighted to come back here if they'll have us.
Fantastic. Well, thanks you very much indeed for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks for the cooperation and collaboration between us. It's always a pleasure. Well, that is the end of our live broadcasting here from the World Retail Congress for 2019. If you want a copy of the History of Retail in 100 Objects, just send me an email, david.roth@wpp.com. We'll see if we can get one out to you. There's many more interviews that we've done during the course of this Congress that we haven't had time to show you, so there'll be a special bonus edition, or maybe bonus couple of editions coming out. So all you need to do is just look at the Brandsy website and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll be let know when those are available. Well, from the World Retail Congress 2019, I'd just like to thank all of our technical team here from Studio Stream who have made sure that we can not just capture everything that's been said, but also broadcast streaming live each night. So from all of us here from the World Retail Congress 2019, thank you very much indeed for watching, and we look forward to seeing you, wow, in 2020.